I'm 29 and married to my husband, Tyler, who's 32. We've been together for 6 years, married for 3, and just a few months ago, we had our first baby. I thought our lives were finally settling into something beautiful. Sleepless nights, spit up on every shirt I own, and the weird bliss of watching someone's whole life begin, it felt like everything was finally worth it. But that perfect picture got ripped to shreds a week ago, and the one holding the knife? My mother-in-law. Tyler's mom never liked me. She wasn't outwardly cruel or anything, just cold, calculated. Always giving these little smiles that didn't reach her eyes, acting like everything I did was just a bit wrong. I dressed too casually. I didn't come from their kind of background. I worked instead of staying home. You know the type. I ignored it, or tried to. Tyler always defended me when things got tense, and I honestly thought that once the baby arrived, she'd finally soften. She did, for about 2 days. She showed up at the hospital with balloons, made a fuss about how much our daughter looked like Tyler, and even brought homemade soup. But after that, I started catching strange looks from her. Long stares when she thought I wasn't watching. Offhand comments about strong genes skipping generations. One time she even joked about our baby not having Tyler's nose. I brushed it off at first, chalked it up to her being a little odd. Then came the weirdest part, she kept asking if she could babysit. Like, constantly. We'd just gotten home from the hospital, and she was already offering to take the baby for weekends. Tyler thought it was sweet. I thought it was strange. Eventually, I gave in and let her watch our daughter for a single afternoon while I went to a doctor's appointment. When I came back, everything seemed fine. But I was wrong. Something had changed, and I didn't know it yet. That night after she babysat, I noticed my daughter's onesie had been changed. Not unusual, babies spit up all the time. But what caught my attention was that the dirty one, her original outfit, was nowhere to be found. Normally, my mother-in-law folds it up or tosses it in the laundry basket. This time, it had vanished. I asked her casually if the baby had a blowout and she said yes, a really bad one, and that she threw the onesie away. Something didn't sit right with me. A few days later, I went to grab a bottle from the diaper bag she'd used and found something tucked into a side pocket. A receipt. Not from a baby store or a pharmacy, but a receipt from a DNA testing company. The date matched the exact day she babysat. I stared at it for a full minute before my brain could even process what I was seeing. I didn't say anything at first. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just curious. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. But the more I thought about it, the worse it got. Why would she take my baby's onesie and lie about it? Why would she need a DNA test, unless she thought my daughter wasn't Tyler's? The next morning, I confronted Tyler with the receipt. His first reaction wasn't disbelief or anger. It was confusion, then defensiveness. He said his mom would never do something like that, and I must be misunderstanding. I told him to call her and ask. He refused. He said I was being paranoid. That his mom might be a little intense but she'd never cross a line like that. I let it go, for about 12 hours. Then I did something I wasn't proud of. I logged into our home Wi-Fi router. Tyler never changed the default password, and I remembered him once helping his mom set up email on her phone using our Wi-Fi. I checked the network history. There it was. Her phone had accessed the DNA company's website twice, once on the day she babysat, and again 4 days later. I didn't need more proof. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at my daughter's crib, feeling this sick, twisting sensation in my chest. I wasn't angry yet. I was scared. Not of what the test would say. I had no doubts about my child, but of what this meant for my marriage. If Tyler didn't believe me now, what would happen if she gave him the results? Would he start doubting me too? The next morning, I told him everything. I laid out the receipt, the Wi-Fi history, and even showed him the company's name on her phone log from our network. I expected him to be shocked, furious at her. But he just sat there. He didn't defend her this time. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the floor for a long time before whispering, "I need to talk to her." I asked him, half afraid of the answer, if he thought the baby might not be his. He didn't say no. He just left. Hours passed. I called him. No answer. Finally, I called his sister, hoping she'd know where he was. She told me he was at their mother's house. That they'd been talking in private. I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just about the test anymore. He was keeping secrets too. When he finally came home that night, he looked like he'd aged 5 years. I asked him what they talked about. And he broke. He said his mom had already shown him the results. She had mailed the onesie in for a DNA paternity test, and the results came in that morning. And according to her, Tyler wasn't the father. My whole body went cold when he said it. Tyler wasn't the father? I didn't even have words. I just stared at him, heart racing, hands trembling, as he repeated it like some terrible chant. She showed me the paperwork. It says I'm not the father. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and ask how he could even entertain that for a second. But I stayed quiet, trying to hold it together. I told him we needed to do our own test, through a real clinic, no weird third-party companies, no mother-in-law interference. And thankfully, he agreed. But something had already shifted. For the next few days, Tyler barely looked at me. He was distant, always thinking, always out of the room when the baby cried. He still fed her, still changed diapers, but with this robotic detachment, like she was someone else's child. Mine, not his. And that's when the doubts started creeping in. Not about my daughter, never about her. But about Tyler. About us. If a piece of paper from his mother could shake his faith in me that easily, then what did that say about our entire relationship? I finally called the clinic and scheduled the test myself. We both went in, gave our samples, and waited. The whole week felt like living under a thundercloud. He stopped sleeping in our bed. He said he needed space, that it wasn't personal, but it was. Everything about it was personal. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law started sending me cryptic texts. Screenshots of the DNA results with smug captions like, "Truth always comes out," and "A woman's character shows when she's under pressure." I didn't respond. I just kept saving every message. Because part of me already knew I'd be needing them soon. The clinic called exactly 6 days later. I was holding my daughter when I got the message. Our results were ready to be picked up in person. I didn't hesitate. I strapped her into the car seat, drove straight to the lab, and signed the papers with shaking hands. The nurse handed me an envelope. I didn't wait. I opened it right there in the lobby. And just like I knew it would, the paper said what I'd been trying to scream into the void all along. Tyler was the biological father. 99.99%. No question. No doubt. I cried right there in the waiting room. Not sad tears, just this sudden flood of relief, anger, exhaustion, and something close to vindication. I took a picture of the paper, printed 3 extra copies, and drove home. When Tyler got back from work that night, I handed him the envelope. I didn't say a word. Just watched his face as he read it. His eyes darted across the page, then up to me, then back down again. His mouth opened, then shut. He looked like he'd just been punched. I didn't scream at him. I didn't ask him why he didn't believe me. I just said, "You owe your daughter an apology." He tried to explain himself. Said he'd been confused, that his mother was so sure, and that seeing something on paper had gotten in his head. But I wasn't interested in explanations anymore. I was interested in decisions. I asked him point blank if he still wanted to be a husband. A father. A man who stood by the people he claimed to love. And all he could say was, "I need time." Time? He already had all the time in the world to trust me. And he didn't. He packed a bag that night. Didn't say where he was going. Just muttered that he needed a few days to clear his head. I didn't stop him. I didn't cry. I didn't ask him to stay. I just watched as he zipped up his suitcase and walked out the door like a stranger. And then the silence started. 2 days passed, then 3. No calls, no texts, just radio silence, as if disappearing again would somehow fix what his mother had broken, and what he allowed to shatter. Meanwhile, she was doubling down. I got an email from her the very next morning after Tyler left. It was full of passive-aggressive "I hope you're not poisoning my son against me" lines and vague threats about how a mother's intuition is rarely wrong. She even had the nerve to question the validity of the clinic's test, claiming I must have pulled some strings or used a donor sample. I didn't even respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to Tyler. No comment. No message. Just her words in black and white, standing on their own. He didn't reply. That's when I realized something. This wasn't just about one test or one mistake. It was about the quiet pattern of Tyler always folding when his mother pushed, always choosing peace with her over truth with me, always assuming I could be the one in the wrong. And now, even with the truth in his hands, he had vanished again. So, I stopped waiting. I called a lawyer. Not because I was filing yet, but because I needed to know what protecting my daughter might look like if the man who was supposed to protect us chose silence again. The lawyer was kind, calm. She didn't push me into anything, just listened while I laid everything out: Tyler's absence, his mother's interference, the DNA test fiasco. I didn't even cry until I said the words. He just walked away from her. She nodded and told me something I didn't expect. Emotional abandonment isn't rare in cases like this. That some partners can't handle doubt, even when it's planted by someone else, and instead of owning their reaction, they run. That didn't make it easier, but it did make me feel less alone. We talked about custody, about protecting our assets, about making sure that if this went south, my daughter and I would be okay. She told me to keep records, messages, receipts, even photos, anything that showed the truth of the situation. I already had plenty. And I realized, in that moment, I was more prepared for this than I wanted to be. That night, Tyler finally called. No apology. Just a quiet voice asking if he could come see the baby. I asked him why now. He said he missed her. I told him missing her wasn't the same as showing up for her. That he had a lot more to fix than just his absence. He asked if I was going to leave him. I didn't answer. Instead, I said, come home. But come ready to explain what kind of husband and father you actually want to be. He said okay. But I could hear the hesitation in his voice, and I wasn't sure which version of him would walk through the door. He came home the next morning, suitcase still in hand, like he hadn't made up his mind until the very last second. He looked tired, older. He hugged our daughter like he was trying to convince himself he still belonged there. Then we sat down. No small talk. No soft re-entry. I told him I needed real answers, not rehearsed lines. And for once, he didn't try to spin it. He admitted he believed the test because, deep down, part of him had been unsure. Not because of anything I did, but because of years of his mother whispering doubts into his ear, about me, about our relationship, about how quickly we got pregnant. He said she'd always made him feel like I was too good to be true, like he didn't deserve this life, and that eventually, I'd betray him. So when she said the baby might not be his, he didn't want to believe her, but part of him already had. He cried when he said it. And I just sat there, numb. Because those weren't just her thoughts. They were his, too. He chose to give her doubts more weight than my loyalty, than my word, than his own daughter's face staring back at him every morning. He asked if I could forgive him. And I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. Because this wasn't something I could answer in a moment. Trust doesn't rebuild itself overnight. Not when it's been cut open by the person who swore to protect it. So I told him the truth, you broke something in me. And I don't know if it can be fixed. For the next 2 weeks, we existed in a fragile kind of limbo. Tyler was home, physically present, doing all the right things, helping with night feedings, cooking dinner, even putting his phone down more. But emotionally? He was walking on eggshells, and so was I. He apologized often. Not in grand gestures, but in small, quiet ways. Like whispering I'm sorry when I passed him in the hallway. Leaving little notes with coffee. But none of it could erase the fact that he had looked at our child and doubted she was his. The trust was gone. Worse, the silence from his mother said everything I needed to know. She didn't care that the test was wrong. She hadn't reached out. Not once. Not to apologize. Not to acknowledge the mess she'd made. She was doubling down in the shadows, and I could feel it. Then, one night, while I was feeding our daughter, I found something. Tyler had left his laptop open on the kitchen table. A message thread with his mother was up. I didn't mean to snoop, but it was right there. And what I read made my stomach turn. She was still claiming the test was fake. Still insisting that just because a paper says it doesn't mean it's true. Still calling me manipulative. A liar. A trap. And Tyler? He hadn't defended me. Not once. All he said was, please stop. I'm trying to fix this. Fix this? He should have ended it. Drawn the line. Told her the damage was done and that if she couldn't respect me, or his daughter, she'd be cut off. But he didn't. And that's when I realized, maybe I wasn't the only one he was afraid of losing. The next morning, I asked him to pack a bag again. But this time, it wasn't his decision. I told him I'd seen the messages. That I knew his mother was still spreading lies, and worse, that he was letting her. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said the words I'd been holding in for days, you were supposed to protect us. And instead, you chose to protect her lies. He started to protest, said he was just trying to keep the peace. But I told him peace built on silence wasn't peace at all. It was surrender. And I wasn't willing to raise my daughter in a home where her own father allowed someone to question her identity, her worth, her family, just to avoid a confrontation. He begged me not to do this. He said he loved us, that he made a mistake. I told him love without courage isn't love. It's convenience. He left that afternoon. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just quietly. I stood at the door holding our daughter while he walked to his car with red eyes and shaking hands. And when he pulled away, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. This wasn't how I imagined our family would look. But I also never imagined being betrayed by the man I trusted most. I didn't plan for this, raising a child alone, facing the weight of betrayal and bitterness, but I did know one thing. My daughter would never have to wonder where she came from. She would never question if she was wanted, or loved, or believed in. Because she has me. And that's more than enough.